So Marcel, thank you so much for this unbelievable film. I've now watched it twice, and the second time I just picked up on so much more of the emotion, the hardship of actually extracting this kind of in-depth story, the kind of trust that you developed with your characters. So I was just wondering if, to begin with, you could tell us a little bit about how you came to this story and what made you choose Zarifa.
I watched it obviously so many more times, and it's still quite a journey. So I lived in Afghanistan in 2009 for a year and a half. I came from photojournalism. As a photojournalist, I worked 10 years in news, and then tried to move into reportage. And back then in 2009, it was a country. People were still very hopeful. The entire international community was there. It was a bubble of expats in Kabul. There was a lot of party going on. Everybody talks about the golden times in around 2008, 2009 with, there was hope. But it was mainly a bubble of expats who've been trying to help this country. Arab Spring started. Everybody left, us, the crowd of journalists. And I came back in 2018 to do another project. And I realized a very big change. Hope was gone. There was a lot of violence coming up. You couldn't travel the country almost any more because it was in the hand of the Taliban, 70%. But there was this unbelievable, strong and growing young generation. Well-educated girls, a lot of girls and boys. They spoke English. They were ready to take over. They thought, okay, there are a lot of mistakes being done, but we are ready to take over. And it was this generation, these young people. Suddenly the bubble was basically dominated by young people, all Afghans. Most of the expats had gone, and it was a completely different experience. It was very striking. I did a 4-part series about Afghanistan as an archival thing called Afghanistan, a Wounded Land. I did it for Arte in 2019, where I tried a little bit like the Ken Burns Vietnam thing to tell how did we get where we are. And I started before the Shah, and always the biggest problem of this country was being a divided country. Division on so many levels, countryside, city, people who want to progress, the others who want to stay as they are, and obviously gender. And I did this series ending with the last chapter where I say, everybody's talking about Taliban will come back, and I said, no, Taliban are back. It's just a matter of time when they take over. So I finished this in 2019, and I said, well, now I have so much access. I had access to the Taliban. I had access to unbelievable strong women. And I said, I'm going to go back and do the very same thing in character-driven verite. And so I came in 2020, January. I had the Taliban. So I managed to get them, I could convince them that I want to go into the territories, look for a character. And there have been a couple of journalists, Vice, BBC, whatever, they would go in, come back, do a 10-minute piece for news. But I said, no, I've seen basically every frame which been done about you guys. There's nothing cinematic. I want to do something cinematic. I want to understand who you are, because these guys have been legitimized already by the international community, especially by the US government, by doing a peace deal on a very big platform in Doha without involving the Afghan people, nor the Afghan government. And they said, so they're legitimized already. So let's see who are these guys and how did they gain the trust of such a huge part of the population who feel betrayed, who feel neglected, who feel angry. Quite a phenomenon which you see not only in Afghanistan but all around the world. angry men who are seeking violence in order to change their destiny, not only happening in Afghanistan. So I said, okay, I have those. I need a strong woman. I need one representative of this strong young generation. And there are a lot of very well-educated Afghan politicians, women, whatever. But when I read about Zarifa, and I met her the first time. I was working with Tamana Yazi, a very young filmmaker back then, producer who I met from before, and who was this young generation. She was one of them, and I said, hey, let's meet Zarifa. I had read about her in the New York Times. She got elected from the BBC as one of the most courageous women for 2019. And I think when we met Zarifa the first time, it was, I think, the sequence how we started with this march. We're talking about the most dangerous street in Afghanistan, 50 kilometers in front of Kabul, the door to Kabul. She had been already attacked once on the street, and she leads this demonstration. She's the only woman here leading a 400-man demonstration out of nothing to demonstrate for peace and education and equality. And I thought, what the fuck? I haven't seen anything like this ever. She had been burned on both hands, on feet, on an accident. We're not explaining this in the film, but and she was bleeding, and it was muddy and it was dirty, and she still was going like Benzabi Bhutto, this leading figure, Mahatma Gandhi style, through the crowd, leading them. And I said, oh, that's what I've been looking for.
That's unbelievable. And I mean, that is the impact that I get from this one. Like, what a woman. Like, what courage and drive and just complete resilience for what she believes in and what she's doing. You are a man, obviously, in Afghanistan, shooting very personal moments with her and her husband, well, her fiancé and husband, and also with her bodyguard. You are there when she's crying, when she's struggling with her family, all these things. How do you, as a filmmaker, manage to get that kind of trust and that kind of, you're almost invisible when you're there. I feel like I'm literally just watching her. How did you achieve that?
Well, I think there are a lot of factors which are important. I come from photojournalism, so I'm used to become invisible. That's how, as a photographer, you're with your, back then with your 5D, and you try to just be invisible. In documentary filmmaking, I'm self-shooting director, and we're always only two. It was Tamana and me. No sound, no translation. I would never ask for a translation on the spot, because this would just interfere in the whole thing. I always thought, and we did a lot of interviews, obviously, when you feel something without understanding the words, by understanding the emotion, you will definitely feel even stronger once you understand the words, and it always works. So you don't have to understand, let kind of translation happening on the spot. You can do this in the edit room, and you do understand if this is strong. The moment of the mother, a couple of days after father gets killed, again, a situation where it's complicated, women in grief, Muslim, I'm foreigner, I'm a man, but we get this access by coincidence that I am allowed to see the mother. She didn't know me, and I have her literally, we basically have everything in the film. I managed to film her at the window, how she looks, and you see this unbelievable pain in her face. And then, I mean, we're talking about traumatized people, the traumatized country, and you don't have to do a lot in order to just listen, and then you activate them and everything breaks out. And then I saw, okay, we have this unbelievable footage of a strong, intimate interview. How do we be able to try to create another, convince them to spend a day? And that's basically, we had 2 days, 2 moments with them, and it's in the film. But everybody else, to get the trust, and I think that's what makes her even more of a strong character, because access is basically what you need. And I got access to the political Zarifa, but I got access as well to the personal Zarifa. Documentary filmmaking is sneaking in other people's life, gaining their trust by giving yourself fully into the story. So your 5%, I think, of your work is filmmaking. The rest is becoming the friend, the therapist, the whatever, you name it, for 2.5 years. Of talking every day, of more than every day, especially when they had to leave the country and they have to resettle in a country where they don't understand the language and they never chose to go there, and then they still have families. So all this level of dependencies you're creating by following somebody over such a long time and keeping them motivated to keep going, to say, hey, well, fuck you followed me already 2 years, 450 hours, you should be done, and to still say, no, trust me, and because this is, I think, the most important thing, this mutual trust, which you gain along the way on this long journeys.
No, it's absolutely incredible access, done with a lot of empathy. And, you know, obviously you've done a really good job at not just being with her, but you've accessed the Taliban in a way that I find, you know, a bit unusual, where we've actually kind of gotten to understand a little bit of the journey that someone goes through to become a part of the Taliban, to have that kind of mentality. Did you find yourself in the film, you know, having a level of empathy for them, and how did that impact you?
Well, yeah, I mean, the leadership is one thing, and then you have the people on the ground, which are completely different, and they're all human beings. And again, I think what I wanted to do here is not to whitewash the Taliban. And ironically, even we're filming with the Taliban 1.5 years before the Taliban take over. They're a clandestine movement. It was complicated to go from the official republic, Afghan republic, and sneak into the clandestinity. You basically pass the last checkpoint of the Afghan government. You go through no man's land kind of thing, and then you had been talking to the guy on the phone who organizes, you're gonna meet somebody who picks you up, Musafir, who picks you up and who drives you into our territories. We're talking about a country where once you leave the official world, there was no cell phone, there was no net, there was nothing. And you have obviously we had the clearance from Qatar. We kind of built trust, but always is the moment where you say, now you get into a situation which you're not able to really to control. And it's again filmmaking that you need to gain the trust of the person. And if then you realize it always is the same. There are human beings, and it's people you need to win over, and it's I love this about the Muslim world, that it's always the same challenge, and it's I don't know, it's emotional and social intelligence which kind of helps in order to get them trusting you and try to trust them, although they might be evil people. And but then, yeah, I was there, and I realized what I want. I didn't want to go the front lines. I didn't want wanted to be actually in a situation where they forget about me, where they play football, where they kill time by being bored, and in order to really bond, in order to understand who are these guys. And so Musafir, 36 years old, looks like 80. He has a crazy journey. He used to work for an American NGO until he thought, this is not working. Money is being spent in wrong ways. This is all corrupted. So he joined the Taliban once his brother got killed by the Americans. So everybody has their own story, and everybody thinks religion gonna heal and make everything okay again. And I think the biggest challenge, because obviously we have much more unbelievable footage of the Taliban, we've been filming quite a lot, it's then in the edit where you have to understand how can I build this puzzle, the 360 degrees, especially knowing that this is going to go on 190 countries, such a huge audience which does not really understand a lot about Afghanistan. How can I make this universal enough to let people understand what I want to do here is not to whitewash them, but to understand the mechanism why people are getting radicalized in a divided country, how radicalism and division of society actually functions, and to understand this might be in Afghanistan, but it's actually happening in our countries as well.
Absolutely, and I think you opened up that window for us to understand a little bit of that journey very effectively. Another journey that I think I was deeply moved by was Zarifa's driver, right? The bodyguard, obviously, he's gone on a journey with her, he feels completely betrayed, and then you see the deconstruction of a person that came across incredibly strong to begin with, and I kind of went, wow, this man drives, he protects her, he, moves her, he does all these things, and I'm like, wow, what, and then at the end, you're really seeing him kind of deconstruct that part of himself and then have to almost rebuild a new version of himself in a Taliban state. What does that do to you, having spent all this time with him? Certainly he must have become a friend, after a point, to see that journey. And also, how do you mitigate the risk that a film like this might pose to someone that's still basically stuck there?
Oh yeah, it's I think every filmmaker obviously is looking for a secondary character, a strong secondary character. You start to get a problem if the secondary character is actually so strong that you end up saying, what the fuck, I could put so much more of this. He was not only good looking, he was a poet, he has such a presence in front of the camera, and he trusted me, and you have then, and you understand, in the beginning, we perhaps very quickly, we started in January 2020, and we go, I am going in, I get the Taliban footage, I get her, I realized, I go back after 2 weeks, I live in Barcelona, I'm back in at home, and I say, well, this is so strong, I have to go back in, so I leave mid-February 2020 back to Afghanistan, and it's very complicated. Zarifa is a person who is always very speedy, and she's
Kinetic.
Yeah, it's very complicated to point her down, to say, hey, let's meet, I need to film. I came all the way, and I was obviously getting quite frustrated. And so I went again to the Taliban, and I was with the Taliban filming when my driver then translates me, because I hear the word COVID. And so they started to talk about COVID, and I was in the middle of the nothing, and they said COVID was invented by Allah, by God, to send it to the Chinese to punish them for being communist and unfaithful. So I realized, okay, I think it's a good time to leave, because it looks to be a serious virus. And I managed to get out of Afghanistan on March 12th, land in March 13th and 14th, the world shuts down. So I'm not able to, the beginning of the film that I lack actually bits of Masoom. I realized he's strong, but I thought I'm gonna come back, but then suddenly I couldn't go back for a couple of months, and the story was evolving. So again, with Masoom, I realized very quickly, but actually much more once Zarifa lost father, and she 3 times survived an attempt on her life, that when she decided I can't just risk any more lives of my family, and where she says, I'm gonna leave, I'm gonna go to Kabul. They offered her a job. Masoom had never served in the army, and he couldn't join her security bodyguard kind of group, so he felt betrayed, and that's actually when I realized, okay, his notion of feeling betrayed, especially a couple of weeks later when she managed to leave the country and he does not, he feels even more betrayed. And like so many other Afghans feel betrayed by the international community for leaving so quickly, for leaving them alone with the Taliban regime, for once they're out being punished by sanctions and being left with nothing, and for being left alone by the other Afghans who managed to leave. So the entire country is traumatized and feel betrayed by basically everybody, and that's what I realized. This is really this journey is Massoum represents this journey, and you have this 180 degree from absolute.
It's an incredible story arc. You could never seen that coming, you know.
Never, and you almost kind of, it was just too strong. And then when we met, 2 weeks after Kabul fell, I managed to go from Uzbekistan to drive back into Kabul. Tamana, who filmed the parts when they had to leave, I was until 10 days before Kabul fall. We were thinking it's gonna fall, it's gonna fall, it's gonna fall. Nothing happened. And I had to go back, birthday of my daughter, and then it basically the day, it was a Friday when I said, okay, I think I have to come back, and on Sunday Kabul fall, and Tamana, who was there, so suddenly you're in a situation where as you're a filmmaker, the film does not become suddenly not the most important thing. You have your team there, Tamana and Zarifa, and everybody remembers this terrible situation on the airport. People getting killed, and we had to understand, how can we get the people out? So we managed to get them out, and I managed to go back in after a couple of weeks, and I realized that from there on that Massoum was the only possibility to. I didn't want to finish the film with the exodus and her being a victim. She was just too strong. She said, we started editing obviously, but I said, I'm gonna keep filming. As everybody said, no, the film stopped. Exodus, khalas, that's it. And I said, no, we have to continue. And so I went back in, and I realized the story in Afghanistan is so strong. And I went back in for this film 4 times. And you could see the development of deterioration of the people and him. And then when she told me, I'm gonna go back, it's when I thought, okay.
This film is not done.
And I'm happy because she belongs to the country, and that's where it's an empowering thing. She is an empowering woman. She is somebody who says that despite all this misery, despite all the failures, despite everything, this is a woman who is a role model where the personal relationship with her husband is upside down, not only for Afghan context, for the entire world. She says, I will not go without you. Normally it's the man saying, I don't leave you alone. She goes back, it's always her, and he is the shadow of her. And this to see this complexity of this woman was just so I say, she needs to go back. So I was very happy when she took this decision.
Yeah, it's very beautiful to see that interaction between him and his level of almost, he's pained by her journey, but he respects it and admires it so much that he keeps pushing her to go forward, which is very unusual to see. You were mentioning, all the risks that everybody's going through when you're making a film like this, and every time that she's traveling somewhere and at risk of getting shot at, so are you. How did you navigate that risk to yourself, both physically, mentally, emotionally? How did you balance that, and how did you measure, okay, I'm going to keep going, or I'm going to draw a line and stop?
We always felt much safer with the Taliban because once you're with them, they can't attack you, and they so funny enough, wow, this was so dangerous with the Taliban. No, it actually was the safest bit. Once you're in, you're fine. I was much more afraid of being with her, especially the trips to Maidan Shah. We limited the trips to tried not to do it so many times, especially not in her car. But because she was a target not only for the Taliban. it was the more the country, the Afghan government was getting under pressure, the more inside jobs have been done by specific targets. I mean, it's not proven, but everybody's talking about, and that a lot of attacks have been done to soft targets, female journalists, female lawyers, judges, even schools, where where it was convenient for troubleshooters to do this and to blame the Taliban, to prove the international community, because they knew this is going to go around the world very, very quick, that the Taliban are still evil. Again, something which it's happening, and I was very much afraid about this. Western journalists being attacked by the Taliban is something which goes around the world and creates news. So it was. We try to limit it situations. I've been covering conflict for 20 years, and you have a gut feeling, and which so far always worked. I'm not a risk taker, as in not seeking the front line. I'm not comfortable when people are shooting. So I very much respect my guts, and we said a lot of times no. I had agreed to go to the Taliban. Everything was organized. One of these trips, but the German Ministry of Defense had arrived the day before was supposed to go into the Taliban territories, breaking the deal. And saying that stuff which was against the agreement. I said, how can I go now to the Taliban because I'm German? They're gonna make the connections to it's not safe. And I called the contact, the spokesperson, Zaibullah Mujahid, and I said, sorry, but I'm not going in. I'm German, and it's just you can't control everybody on the ground. So this kind of situations. Tamanna is Afghan. She born in a context of war, and to deal with basically with fear and violence and danger is something which is in her blood. You just keep on going, so you live. That's your life. And it was me and her kind of measuring and just trying to understand. Okay, how far can we go? And we said a lot of times no.
Yeah. And just a couple questions before we open it up to the audience, but which would you say, I mean, you've been covering conflict, as you said, for 20 years. What is the highest price that you pay when you are getting involved with these stories? Is it, time with your own family? Is it, friends? Is it losing friends? What's the price that you are paying to make these stories?
There are a lot. I covered Syria for a very long time, and I think I realized one thing is the problem is not when you're there, the problem is when you're back. It's when it's getting silent and you're calmed down, when you have to be careful not to avoid the silence and to say, I better go back because then I'm busy again. So I think that was for me very, very important to be careful in these moments, not to react like this. I have to go back again, but to say, that's your reality. Here you live, here you have your family, here you have your friends. So everybody has, I think, their own techniques. I don't know anybody. We're a small circle. We know each other. All of them know each other. All of them went to PTSD. None of them would not. Multiple times. And I think, again, I think it's not about seeking adrenaline. There might be a lot who it's, I think, what I'm always very much interested in is people. It's just people in this kind of extreme situations, the purest good and worst part of human beings are coming out in a very, very strong emotional kind of amount, and I think that's especially if you're interested in this. I feel privileged to witness this with my eye. I feel privileged to meet these people and to make a living out of this, and to have the excuse that I'm gonna tell your story. I believe in documentary filmmaking as something as you're able to break down complex contexts, a political context, to a emotional storyline by finding right characters who take you with their journey, and this might help to understand and to relate to these people you perhaps thought that they live in a completely different context, but it's actually quite universal what's going on even in this part of the world. I did my Watani, my other film, was a Syrian family, and I think then you come out of the film and you say, this could be me. And I think that's always what I'm trying to do. Obviously, so far in a lot of times in contexts of where things are turned upside down from one day to the other. But yeah, I'm trying to move into other parts, so not going to be stuck there for all my life. I hope.
I noticed obviously Hillary Clinton was one of the producers for this film, and I was just wondering how she became involved and at what stage she became involved in this project.
Yeah, it's when the pandemic hit, and I was with already 45 minutes of strong footage, and I realized, okay, here's a very strong film. But I did a sizzle. I self-produced everything in the beginning, which is actually quite possible, especially if you self-shoot and your gear is cinematic but available and not so expensive. So all this is, you are suddenly able to produce yourself. But then I tried to knock doors, and I knew already through my other kind of films that I know the people, the commissioning editors, platforms and channels, but nobody was able to react because of the pandemic. Nobody was thinking about Afghanistan. So I got a lot of no's or not even an answer. And I realized, okay, I have to put this on bigger shoulders. So I got Propagate in LA, and they just had done the series, Hulu series about Clintons. And they said, let's get her involved. She's a very, very strong woman advocate. And that's how she got involved. And I think she watched the film 2 weeks before premiere. She liked it, but it was the production team, Siobhan Sinnerton, whom I know as well from her time at Channel 4. I've been dealing with, and never the Clintons themselves. So again, I think I realized very quickly that I don't want to do a biopic. I knew she's by coincidence she's a mayor. If you would do a film about the mayor of Torun, you would end up to have the very same situation. The life of a mayor is actually quite boring. They don't do things. They do sign papers in Afghanistan, the work of her being a mayor was very unsexy to follow. So I chose her because of her being a woman, being a strong woman. And I think my biggest difficulties, especially her being so busy with so many things, is to really activate her in a sequence. I then very, very quickly understood that filming in a foreign language, in a foreign country with a foreign language, especially in Afghanistan, which is so alien to our world, means that you're not really able to create long sequences because you get bored. I mean, there's a lot of tea drinking, there's a lot of waiting, there's not a lot of stuff which is engaging. And so I needed to get her activated, which was very challenging. I then realized, okay, I do want to have the Taliban, which again, I think with Taliban always was the easiest bit to film, because the context of filming within the, how you say, the cave of the lion, you say in German, die Höhle des Löwen, is everything works. I mean, the context is the strong, and the access is the strong thing. So you, whatever, it's, filming them football is already strong because it's Taliban filming, playing football. So I was actually quite relaxed about this storyline. I was very happy to find this guy, Musafer, who was actually a little bit too soft for being a Taliban. You could immediately kind of start to like this guy. I was struggling, is this the right thing to do? But I had another option, more kind of a grim guy, but he was not such a strong leading character in actuality. So he was saying a bit more kind of radical things, but he was not strong in front of the camera. This guy I could follow, this guy I could see that he cares for the people, and it's these people who win the trust of the population. So this storyline was kind of an easy thing. I just had far too much of what I could put in the film, so the edit was complicated to decide what I have to kill. It was then, for me, I wanted to this third storyline is the storyline of the country. I wanted to show the journey and make this universal. And you have the two big turning points. You have the death of the father, where I kind of call it the resurrection, when you have the mother mourning with a strong interview, and then you have this moment on the boat where she looks into the infinity, and you see the pain in her face, and you have the uplifting Zarifa with the arms. And I was filming this, I was crying while filming, because this says everything. And then we kind of go from there into her strong speech, saying, "I will not give up. You won't silence me," to the moment in the grave, and her starting to shoot. Where I said, "Okay, this is where I take this is a 10 minutes whole block, which is a strong bit, which kind of shapes the structure of your film. This is basically coming from Act 1 into Act 2." And you have a lot of setup in Act 1 to understand the country, the different characters. It's very, very difficult to get into such a complicated 3-character structure of a film. So it was a nightmare. The first 15 minutes were very, 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 very painful for us to see how can we get it quick enough that people get engaged and stay and survive. We have to survive the first 15 minutes. That was always the big challenge. But then once you have her resurrecting and with the gun, you have the exodus, and like the build up to things are getting more and more chaotic. The Taliban are coming closer, closer, closer. We have the moment of the riots on the streets. Obviously, we had it much bigger because it was a very, very kind of crazy moment. But this kind of, again, a mechanism to show how people are getting radicalized by collateral damage. Somebody gets killed, and then you have this guy, long live the Taliban, and then the Taliban arrive. So you have Act 2 finishing with the Taliban taking over, and you're 70 minutes into the film, and you have been really spending a lot of emotional. It's emotional. It's you reach 70 minutes and you don't have a lot of energy, and then you have Act 3, and I have so much footage of Masoom discovering the universe of the Taliban, Masoom meeting the guy who shot at him. We have the Taliban commander saying into my camera, "We tried to kill her 3 times, but she, lucky, disappeared. She is brave." I had it in the film, but you're just not able to put this back into the film because I have her one of the most crazy, we started the film like this in another version, where she's just came out of Afghanistan after her crying with the sand thing, and I see her in the hotel in the morning. An hour before, there was this huge attack at the airport in Kabul where ISIS had blown up a bomb and a lot of people died, and it's all filmed on video. And she hadn't seen this. She had just left Afghanistan. She had lost her entire life from one day to the other, from 1 second to the other. And I see her in the hotel room. It was 5 days later, and she collapsed. It's the most painful bit of filmmaking I ever did in my life, I guess. But I realized I had it in. I couldn't put it in and then have her go back, because it was just too much. And I think this is about rhythm of filmmaking. How do you structure in order to get the people still going all the way until the end? It was painful to get this kind of things out of the film for the sake to still be able to make the story arc work without losing the attention of the audience.
And just for context, Marcel, can you tell us how many hours of footage you had to make this cut?
We had 450 hours. A lot of hours.
There's a lot of hours we haven't seen.
Thank you so much for sharing all this inside information. It's really interesting. I just guess I wanted to know a little bit more about less of the creative producing of it and the structure, which is fantastic. Thank you for that, really. But I really wanted to know a bit more about how you chose images, how you chose what we see.
The thing is, when you follow somebody who is so driven, who is so active, who leads, she leads everything. There's nothing you can decide. Yeah, she leads. She decides what I have to eat. Basically, it goes this far. So it's very complicated to direct. As in, wait here. It was really, and it's good. She was a very, very good. She delivered character, kind of. Let's go to the refugee camp, because and then she goes and she makes it her mission, because she was going already twice to the refugee camp, and I needed to go and say, hey, why didn't tell me? So we went there again. This kind of, but once, I think what I really, really wanted to do is to make it look cinematic. I tried to work as much with tripod as possible, although it was complicated and we went to so remote areas. I was still carrying the light tripod, and I kind of spinned the whole camera down to a spare minimum in order to be light. And I filmed not with cine lenses but with EF lenses in order to be able to be to carry all this. And I wanted to capture the faces. I mean, Afghanistan is one of the few countries in the world where you can get to places and you look around and nothing has changed in the last 2,000 years. It's so difficult to find this anywhere else in the world. And I wanted to show the beauty of the country. This film needed to breathe, and we have the Buzkashi thing with the horses, and that's the moment where I wanted to get it poetic. I wanted to make it epic. I wanted to make it create the emotions, obviously, in order to make it easier for people to fall in love with the country, with the journey of the people, and it's always nicer if you're visually strong, I guess.
I'm interested in the transition of the first part of the movie and the second, because in the first part, Zarifa showed you her life. She had it more or less under her control. And when the US left Afghanistan, her life changed. It was like more broken, like it was not under her control anymore. I'm interested how this transition was for you, like for your emotional view, and because you were thrown in this situation too, and was like the circumstances changed, the storyline laid in the outside, not more in Zarifa's or your hands. And I think, were you a viewer of your film too in this part? How did you get distance to your emotions?
There's no script for a documentary. You start a journey, you don't ever know what's gonna come out. I think what I always realized, if you have a strong and important context which matters, and I knew Afghanistan gotta matter. And especially when I realized, okay, this is about to collapse. You just need a strong character, and then you have film always. A strong topic, strong character. You just need to follow. You just need to start to say, okay, let's see where it leads. And you never ever being able to control anything, because there's so many limitations, so many things which don't work out, so many things you miss out. Imagine I left Afghanistan. I mean, it sounds completely crazy, but 10 days before Kabul fell, I've been waiting for a year and a half for this moment, and then I'm at home and I need to go back, and I realize I'm not able to book a flight anymore, and things are happening, and I'm not there. Again, it sounds completely crazy, but in this moment you say, "Oh my God, why did I leave?" This is the filmmaker inside you, and then again, all these challenges, all these kind of moments of didn't work, you don't see it, but there are a million in the process where I just I'm not able to do the film. I missed this, or it's gone. Let's wrap, and it's this roller coaster of just always saying no. Believe it, pandemic, yes, but I still gonna be able to go back, and so it's a challenging thing, and you have you're not able to control this, and you get crazy if you want to control it because you're always gonna lose control. So you better just let it go and follow and believe in the project. I think that's the most important thing, and I think at the end. It all works. It always gonna work out in one way or the other. Especially if you believe in one thing in time. If you're doing story arcs, obviously you have to convince commissioning editors or the people who are paying for this. But time always works as in creating a story arc where the beginning looks different than the end. And so yeah, it was a painful let it go kind of process.
How do you choose your gear? Because your equipment need to be very versatile and durable during your trip. And this is interesting through the quality of the image you can get, through the weight, or what?
I'm using the Canon, which I'm actually, I think. What I always try to do is be light and still cinematic, and I think this is actually exactly what this camera combines, is that I'm able to strip everything down, but still be able to have strong audio. Audio is for me the biggest challenge, because as a filmmaker, without a team, you don't only have to focus. So this camera need to be easy. I never studied. It's one-man orchestra, but as well, it needs to be easy enough for me to completely forget about the camera. I see the picture and I know I'm becoming one with the camera. As a lot of people say, but it's in a way it's true. I just have to forget about the technical part of this thing, because I need to motivate, and I need to think about sequence. I'm cutting in my head already what I'm filming. I can film 1 million hours and still not have a film if I don't have a sequence. I mean, you have to create sequences, and that's why I'm.
There's no double.
Huh?
There is no double.
Exactly.
There's no double take.
There's no double take at all. And you need to understand what does the sequence for me means. and I obviously try to do this while I shoot, because in the edit it's too late. So because all this is something which is really complicated, and then you have to motivate them. This is the even more complicated thing. So it's the intellectual thing of what I'm doing here right now, getting these guys kind of working, being there. That the technical part is actually the least I want to worry about. Everything else is too complicated already. And I think that's why I do light as much as in weight. I use a lot the 70-100. I do a white, interesting the one with the I say with the internal NDs. No, I say shock stabilizer. Image stabilization, because I'm in the cars. I need a good wide. I need a good long, and I love the 85 as a prime. But again, if I don't have so much time to change, and then I try to control. That's what I do like to try to control, is to create a situation where I'm able to become cinematic by putting the lags and start to film them, and then just spend time, create mood, be poetic. And in order to do this, you need to get them to relax. And I think it needs to be a very good mix between actuality-driven sequences where things are happening which move and then if you have a strong sequence, you need a moment where you can relax, where you can let it sink, where you can breathe, otherwise you're overwhelmed with too much drama, too much energy, too much joy, so you want to have all this kind of up and downs, and the happiness and the sadness and all this. In a way, you already need to keep in mind while filming, and you're the one who is in charge in order to basically seek for this moments.
Did you put microphones on her, because the sound is pretty good, and did you hide them? And yeah, that's one of the questions. And also, do you use like autofocus now? Because me as a cinematographer, I do documentaries too. I tend to use it more because it like really, it makes me like concentrate more on the framing, on the creativity. And maybe you give me some insights on the technical sides.
I try to be very disciplined with the audio. It's very challenging, and I've been, every time I'm in New York, I go to B&H and I ask them for hours how I can improve. It's tricky because again, you're dealing with so many things in the same time, and then suddenly it's noisy, but the situation is strong. You don't stop. So you have to see what is more important right now. If you start, hey, wait a minute, and do this, then you want to create a mood. You want to create her getting into a situation of being sad, of being, I don't want to interfere, I want to be invisible. So so you try to do it as good from the get-go. So you I kind of always, but again, she's a woman. I'm not always with Tamana, and we have moments with Tamana to put this under the skin, under all the fabrics. You had the masks, which was not really helpful in terms of getting good sound. But it was always kind of trying to be as disciplined as possible when it comes to sound. I have the Schoeps shotgun. I trying to do it now with a stereo, just to even more improve it more. With 4 channels, hopefully soon. XLR channels, try to monitor them as much as possible to just understand, to be sure that you're able. Sound improves the whole thing so much. I have a shops now. I hopefully next film I'm gonna try to do it, but you need 4 channels then. Left and right, and I do often work with 2 lav mics, with 2 radio mics, with Masoom or with Bashir and with her. So to be safe, we're a lot of times out of range. You're in Afghanistan, but they're jammers. Jammers are the ones who interfere in mobile phone signals, because this is the one who activate the bombs on suicide bombs. There were a lot of magnetic bombs being placed. So you have everywhere the jammers who are making this trigger impossible. So you've been dealing with all this craziness. But yeah, and I did master interviews. It was one of those films where you were not able to just have the actuality working from one to the other, because you need to get into her head. And I had them actually all we have one interview where I filmed Masoom lying in the bed like this, where I thought it's just too beautiful or not to have him in vision. But all the other interviews where she explains what she thinks about education, what's her mission, why she's doing it, it's all master interview, which I did along the entire 2.5 years. I was always, when something strong would happen, I would have a moment and sit down and say, okay, let's talk about it.
I have maybe kind of a little simple or stupid question, is that I find myself when I'm shooting documentary stuff, is I either start recording too soon or too late. And you started talking about creating sequences, trying to motivate them to be a part of the story, and maybe even let them understand what you're trying to do. So, but what is the moment that you're looking for, where okay, now I can press the red button and I will get enough of the entire picture so that it will work in the edit, basically?
It's a challenging thing, because again, filmmaking is a lot about building trust, and especially in countries like Afghanistan, this is actually everywhere. You can't just get somewhere and say, hey, I want to do your story, boom, and you press button. They need to understand who you are. You need to convince them that it makes sense for them, that you follow them. And so I actually, mostly when I meet somebody, I don't even take a camera. Because otherwise you're exactly in this situation where you say, and you don't want to be in this situation, to have this and feel I'm missing things out, and I could start, so I a lot of times not even take a camera, just in order to focus on letting this introductional kind of work, and you sit down, you have your tea, you have a walk, and you just you tell a lot about yourself. I have to. They need to know me in order to be able to know them, and this kind of things. I mean, it's just making friends, and then once this is done, and then you have an understanding that this is gonna work. Chemistry works, it clicked, and then again, you better start thinking about sequences right away. If you start thinking and filming into the blue, you say, without a purpose, you can do it. You can. It's not about directing, but really trying to understand, okay, what I'm doing here, what is this for? You need to, I mean, obviously it takes a while, and you follow in the beginning everything, and then you just do. But I think very quickly you need to understand structure, as in what could be a sequence, and a sequence is a beginning, a middle, and an end. And I think that's where again, coming from self-teaching, I never been to school doing this, where I gotta improve this, and I gotta make my life in the edit so much easier if I only think in sequences, and I try not to film B-roll is something else, but really a sequence in order to be able to understand blocks. And then I do count. I had 400 hours of footage, and then you start to this 400 hours you put on a whiteboard, and it said these are 52 sequences I had from all her in Afghanistan. Zarifa in Afghanistan, 52 sequences for actually not so many times. I filmed so much more later on when I was with Masoom but only a couple of, I think, 30 days filmed with her in Afghanistan, and we managed to have 52 sequences because I really thought I need sequence. So I think that's for me the best thing would help me to improve, to be very, very effectful in planning my shoots.
Thank you so much, Marcel. I was wondering, obviously all of us here were either documentary makers or documentary audiences. I was wondering if, to wrap things up, you could leave us with a final thought on perhaps the ethical boundaries when you're dealing with something so incredibly sensitive, and the role that we play as filmmakers in navigating that line.
I think that's the longer. I mean, I've been struggling with this problem from day one when I got into journalism, because I was as a news photographer. And in news photography, you parachute in somewhere, you take one picture, which has to explain everything, and then you're looking for the next picture. I realized I loved storytelling, but I need to find the speed, and it was the longer time you have, the safer you are to not get into this conflict, because you with somebody like Zarifa, this trust relationship is obviously there's so much work behind and commitment on both sides. I mean, as much from her as from me. I dedicated 2.5 years for the story and for her and for Bashir and for all this. So you want to treat it with respect. And I think the most important moment in the whole thing is when you have her watching, your characters watching the film the first time. I did it, we premiered in Toronto, and a week before, no, 10 days before Toronto, I was telling her, I'm gonna show, trust me. I showed her the film, and I rented a cinema in Berlin, and invited a lot of friends, because I knew if it's gonna be different on a laptop, gonna be very complicated. So I better want to have her on a big screen so she feels it's good. Alone in the cinema it doesn't work, and you want to have a lot of people who, because she's so strong, and then you see her and everybody loves her. So all these components were important for the first moment of her seeing the result of 2.5 years. And she had to share a lot of screen with Masoom and with the Taliban, something which was very challenging for her. She didn't understand it right away. And she was impressed. The reaction of my friends were, I mean, she felt unbelievable empowered. But it took, I think, an hour or two after she left that the first messages came in and said, "No, why everybody else, and why did you show this, and why now I feel like I betrayed him." And it took a couple of days in order to let her sink, to let her understand that I'm trying to tell the story of a country, not a biopic. It's not only you; it's a story. Your story is the story of every Afghan woman. To let her understand that, and she realized. And then we were in TIFF in Toronto, and you have 650 people in the cinema, and you see the role of Bashir, Zarifa, they came as well, Tamana, and a couple of other Afghans, and they watched the entire film holding hands, going through all the pain of them having to leave, crying all the way. I mean, a lot of people in the cinema cried. And then that's the moment where you understand, okay, this is so big, the responsibility you have of, these are vulnerable traumatized people. I have so much footage. I could destroy her. I could make her completely different because I was there all the time. And so it's a huge responsibility to pick how much are you able to show, because you're so intimate with them. It's a Muslim woman. She's without hijab, without scarf, and I try to treat all this huge little kind of cultural sensitivities as much as possible and still be able to make it emotionally engaging. So yeah, I was relieved when we all hugged us and said we managed to make a strong film.
Absolutely, you did, and thank you so much for sharing it with us. If anyone has any more questions for Marcel, feel free to come down at the end, and thank you so much for sharing this journey with us.
Thank you so much.